My name is Margaret, and I am 62 years old. I spent 38 years working as a nurse, saving every penny to give my only son a good life. One ordinary Tuesday afternoon, I opened my mailbox and found a letter from a bank I had never heard of. Inside was a notice about a $200,000 loan in my name, a loan I never applied for. That letter destroyed everything I thought I knew about my own son. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to know where you are joining me from today. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to my channel. What my son and his wife did to me will shock you, but what I did in response might surprise you even more. Stay with me. Let me take you back to the beginning before my world came crashing down around me. I need you to understand who I was and who my son was, or at least who I thought he was. I live in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where neighbors wave at each other and everyone knows your business whether you want them to or not. My husband Robert passed away 12 years ago from lung cancer. We had been married for 25 years when he died, and losing him was the hardest thing I ever went through. But I had Derek, our only child, and he gave me a reason to keep going. After Robert died, I threw myself into my work at the local hospital. I was a registered nurse, and I worked long shifts, sometimes doubles, to make ends meet and to keep my mind occupied. Being alone in that house with all the memories was too painful, so I filled my time with work. Every extra dollar I earned went into savings for Derek and for my retirement. I retired 3 years ago at the age of 59. By then, I had paid off my modest little house completely. It was nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom ranch with a small garden out back, but it was mine. I also had about $350,000 in my retirement account money I had scraped together over nearly 4 decades of hard work. I was proud of what I had accomplished. A widow who raised her son alone and managed to secure a comfortable retirement. Not rich, but comfortable. That was enough for me. Derek was my pride and joy. When he was young, he was such a good boy. Polite, hardworking, always eager to please. He got good grades in school and never gave me any serious trouble. I remember how he used to help me in the kitchen stirring pots and sneaking tastes of whatever I was cooking. He would tell me I was the best mom in the world, and I believed him. When Robert got sick, Derek was only 22. He stepped up in ways I never expected. He visited his father in the hospital almost every day, held his hand, told him stories to make him laugh. After Robert passed, Derek stayed close to me for the first year, checking in constantly, making sure I was eating and sleeping and not falling apart. I thought I had raised a wonderful young man. I sacrificed so much for Derek over the years. When he wanted to go to college, I dipped into my savings to pay his tuition. I worked extra shifts, gave up vacations, wore the same clothes for years so he could have what he needed. I never complained. That is what mothers do. We give everything we have so our children can have better lives than we did. Derek graduated with a degree in business administration and got a job at a mid-sized company in the city. He was doing well, or so he told me. He called me every Sunday like clockwork, and we would talk for an hour about his week, his plans, his dreams. He always ended those calls with the same words, "I love you, Mom." Those words meant everything to me. 4 years ago, everything changed. Derek called me one Sunday, his voice bubbling with excitement, and told me he had met someone special. Her name was Stephanie, and he was convinced she was the one. A few weeks later, he brought her home to meet me. Stephanie was 29 years old at the time, beautiful in a polished, put-together way that made me feel like a country bumpkin in comparison. She had perfectly styled blonde hair, manicured nails, and clothes that looked like they cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She worked in the fashion industry, something to do with marketing for a high-end clothing brand. She was polite enough during that first visit, smiling and complimenting my home, but there was something distant about her. She never quite looked me in the eye, and her smiles never reached her eyes. I told myself I was being unfair. Maybe she was just shy. Maybe she was nervous about meeting her boyfriend's mother. I wanted to like her because Derek clearly adored her. The way he looked at her like she hung the moon and stars made my heart swell and ache at the same time. They got engaged after 6 months of dating, and the wedding was planned for the following spring. Stephanie wanted a big, extravagant affair, a destination wedding at a fancy resort, 500 guests, designer everything. Derek asked if I could help with the costs, and of course I said yes. I contributed $20,000 to that wedding money I had been saving for emergencies. But this was my only son's wedding. What could be more important? The wedding was beautiful. I will admit that much. Stephanie got her dream day, and Derek looked happier than I had ever seen him. I cried during the ceremony, tears of joy mixed with something else I could not quite name. Maybe it was the feeling that I was losing my son to this woman, to this new life that did not seem to include much room for me. After the wedding, Derek and Stephanie moved to a bigger city about 3 hours away. Derek said it was for his career, that there were better opportunities there. I understood. I did not want to be one of those clingy mothers who could not let go. So I smiled and told him I was proud of him and that he should chase his dreams. But things started to change after that. The weekly phone calls became bi-weekly, then monthly. When we did talk, Derek always seemed rushed, distracted. He would say things like, "Sorry, Mom, Steph needs me for something," and end the call abruptly. I tried not to take it personally. Newlyweds need time to build their life together. I kept telling myself that. Stephanie never called me, not once. She did not send birthday cards or holiday greetings. When I would ask Derek to put her on the phone, he would make excuses. "She is busy with work. She is taking a nap. She says hi, though." I started to feel like a stranger to my own son. I offered to visit several times, but Derek always put me off. "Maybe next month, Mom. Things are just really hectic right now." Next month turned into next season, which turned into next year. I had not seen my son in person for over a year when everything fell apart. Despite the distance, I continued to send gifts. Birthday presents, Christmas money, little care packages with homemade cookies and notes telling Derek how much I loved him. I never got thank you cards in return, but I told myself Derek was just busy. He knew I loved him, and that was what mattered. I had no idea that while I was sitting in my little house in Ohio missing my son and counting my modest blessings, Derek and Stephanie were living a life of luxury that I could not have imagined, and they were financing it with my name, my credit, and my future. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. I had just finished watering my tomato plants in the backyard and came inside to sort through the mail. Most of it was junk flyers for pizza places and furniture stores I would never visit. But there was one envelope that caught my attention. It was from a bank I did not recognize. First Continental Financial Services, the return address said. I had never heard of them, and I certainly did not have any accounts with them. I assumed it was a promotional offer the kind banks send out trying to get new customers, and I almost threw it away without opening it. But something made me pause. The envelope looked official, not like the glossy marketing materials I usually received. I tore it open and pulled out the letter inside. What I read made my blood run cold. Dear Margaret Ellen Harrison. The letter began, "This is a final notice regarding your personal loan account. Your account is currently 90 days past due, with a total outstanding balance of $5,400. Yes. Failure to bring your account current within 30 days will result in further collection action and may negatively impact your credit score." I read it again, certain I had misunderstood. Personal loan account. I had not taken out any personal loans. I had not borrowed money from anyone in years. The letter had to be a mistake, or maybe some kind of scam. But then I looked at the details. The loan amount was $200,000. The term was 15 years. The interest rate was 7%. Monthly payments of $1,800. My name, my address, my date of birth. All correct. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. $200,000. Someone had taken out a loan for $200,000 using my name. This was not a mistake. This was identity theft. I sat down at my kitchen table, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how this could have happened. Had someone stolen my mail, hacked into my email, broken into my house, and gone through my files? I had always been careful about protecting my personal information, but apparently not careful enough. I called the bank immediately. After navigating through an endless maze of automated menus, I finally reached a human being. A young man with a bored voice asked me for my account number and the last 4 digits of my Social Security number. When I gave him the information, his tone changed slightly. "Ma'am, I see here that your account is significantly past due," he said. "You need to make a payment immediately to avoid further penalties." "I do not understand," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I never opened this account. I never applied for any loan. There has been some kind of mistake." He was quiet for a moment. "According to our records, the application was submitted 18 months ago. It was approved based on your credit history and verified through a phone call. The funds were dispersed to a linked bank account." What bank account? I demanded. "What phone call? I never received any phone call." He could not give me all the details over the phone. He said the bank would mail me copies of the loan documents, including the application and verification records. It would take 7 to 10 business days. In the meantime, the account remained past due, and the clock was ticking. When I hung up, I felt like I was going to be sick. 7 to 10 business days. How could I wait that long when someone had stolen my identity and put me in debt for $200,000? I went to my computer and pulled up one of those free credit report websites. I had to verify my identity by answering security questions. Questions like, what street did you live on in 1995? And which of the following banks have you had an account with? I answered them all correctly and waited for the report to load. What I saw made me want to throw up. My credit score, which had been around 800 the last time I checked, had plummeted to 550. There were 3 accounts on my report that I did not recognize. The first was the $200,000 loan from First Continental Financial Services. The second was a credit card with a limit of $25,000, and it had been maxed out. The third was another credit card with a limit of $15,000, also maxed out. Total debt in my name that I had not authorized, $240,000. I sat there staring at the screen, tears streaming down my face. Who could have done this? How did they get all my information, my social security number, my driver's license number, my bank account details? Someone had everything they needed to become me on paper. I started going through the details of the accounts, looking for any clues. That was when I noticed something that made my heart stop. The email address associated with 2 of the accounts contained the name Derek. The phone number listed as the primary contact looked familiar too. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts. It was Derek's phone number. My son's phone number. No, that was impossible. There had to be another explanation. Maybe someone had stolen Derek's phone. Maybe a scammer was using his information too. Maybe we were both victims of the same identity theft ring. I called Derek immediately. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Then it went to voicemail. Hi, this is Derek. Leave a message. I hung up and called again. Same result. I called a 3rd time, a 4th time, a 5th time. Each time, it went to voicemail. Finally, I left a message, my voice shaking with fear and confusion. Derek, it is Mom. Call me back immediately. It is urgent. Something terrible has happened. I sat by my phone for the rest of the day waiting. He did not call back that night, or the next day, or the day after that. With each hour that passed, the suspicion I was trying so hard to ignore grew stronger. The email address with his name, his phone number on the accounts, his sudden unavailability. Could Derek really have done this to me? 2 days passed with no word from Derek. I barely slept. I barely ate. I just sat in my living room staring at my phone, willing it to ring. When it finally did, I almost dropped it in my rush to answer. Mom. Derek's voice sounded strange, thin, and reedy, nothing like his usual confident tone. I got your messages. What is going on? Derek, I said, my heart pounding, please tell me the truth. Did you take out a loan in my name? Silence. The kind of silence that tells you everything you need to know before a single word is spoken. Mom, I need to explain something, he said finally. Just answer the question, Derek. Did you or did you not take out a $200,000 loan using my name and my social security number? Another pause. Then so quietly, I almost did not hear him. I did not have a choice, Mom. The world tilted. I had to grab the arm of my chair to keep from sliding onto the floor. My own son. My baby boy. The child I had sacrificed everything for. What do you mean you did not have a choice? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The story came out in fragments like he was pulling splinters from his own flesh. Derek had lost his job over a year ago. His company had gone through layoffs and he was one of the casualties. But he had not told anyone. Not me, not Stephanie, not anyone. He was too ashamed. Stephanie kept spending money like nothing had changed. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, vacations to places I had only seen in magazines. Derek did not know how to tell her they could not afford it anymore. He was afraid she would leave him if she knew the truth. I was going to find another job, he said, his voice cracking. I sent out hundreds of applications. I went to interviews, but nothing worked out. And Stephanie kept wanting more and more. I did not know what else to do. So you stole from your own mother, I asked, the words like acid in my mouth. I was going to pay it back, he insisted. I just needed time. Once I got a new job, I was going to pay off everything, and you would never have known. But you did not get a new job, I said flatly. And now you are 3 months behind on a loan that is in my name. A loan I knew nothing about until a collection notice showed up in my mailbox. Derek was crying now. I could hear him sobbing on the other end of the line. I am so sorry, Mom. I am so sorry. I messed up. I messed up so bad. I asked him how he had gotten my information, how he had managed to forge my signature to verify my identity to open accounts in my name without me knowing. His answer made me realize how foolish I had been. He still had copies of my documents from a few years ago when I had asked him to help me with my taxes. My social security card, my driver's license, my bank statements. I had trusted him completely, and he had used that trust to destroy me. He had forged my electronic signature on the loan application. He had called the bank pretending to verify the application using what he knew about me to answer the security questions. And for 18 months he had been living off money that was not his, while I had no idea anything was wrong. I asked him what the money had been spent on. He hesitated, and I knew the answer would be bad. Stephanie wanted things he said weekly. She had expectations, what kind of things I pressed. He listed them off, each item, another nail in the coffin of my trust. Handbags from Chanel and Louis Vuitton, $35,000 worth. 2 vacations to Europe, $40,000. A new Mercedes for Stephanie, $55,000. The deposit and 6 months' rent on a penthouse apartment, $20,000. The rest had gone to fancy dinners, spa treatments, designer clothes, and other luxuries I could not even comprehend. My entire life savings could not buy the lifestyle they had been living on money stolen from me. You spent $240,000 on handbags and vacations while I was clipping coupons and wearing shoes with holes in them. I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. While I was eating canned soup to stretch my grocery budget, your wife was carrying purses that cost more than my car. Derek did not have an answer. What could he possibly say? Suddenly, I heard another voice in the background, a woman's voice, sharp and demanding. What are you talking about? Who is that? It was Stephanie. She had overheard part of our conversation and wanted to know what was going on. Derek tried to put her off, but she grabbed the phone from him. I heard a scuffle, and then Stephanie's voice was in my ear. Margaret, what is going on? I told her the truth in one blunt sentence. Your husband stole my identity and took out over $200,000 in loans and credit cards in my name without my knowledge. The shriek that came through the phone nearly deafened me. What, Derek? What is she talking about? I could hear Derek trying to explain, stammering and apologizing, but Stephanie was not having it. You told me you got a promotion, she screamed at him. You told me we could afford all of this. You told me your investments were doing well. So Derek had been lying to everyone, not just to me, but to Stephanie, too. She had not known where the money was really coming from. That did not make her innocent in my eyes. A reasonable person would have questioned how her husband could suddenly afford a luxury lifestyle on a mid-level salary, but she had not questioned it because she did not want to. She was happy to live like a queen without asking how it was being paid for. Derek came back on the line, his voice desperate. Mom, please do not report this. I will find a way to pay you back. Give me time. I will sell everything. I will get a job. Please just do not call the police. I am your son. Those last 3 words hung in the air between us. I am your son. As if that excused everything. As if sharing my blood gave him the right to steal my future. I need time to think, I said, and I hung up the phone. I sat alone in the dark for hours that night, crying until I had no tears left. How had it come to this? How had my sweet little boy, the child who used to tell me I was the best mom in the world, turned into a thief who would rob his own mother to keep his wife in designer handbags? I did not know the answer. All I knew was that I had to make a choice that would determine the rest of my life and my relationship with my son. Over the next few days, I received the documents from the bank that I had requested. Seeing everything in black and white made it impossible to deny anymore. Derek's phone number and email address with his name. A mailing address that I later confirmed was a P.O. box he had rented specifically for this purpose. He had been thorough. He had planned this carefully. This was not a desperate act done in a moment of panic. This was calculated fraud. I sat at my kitchen table and went through the transaction records line by line, every purchase, every withdrawal, every payment, and with each line my heart broke a little more. There it was, documented in cold clinical detail. The Chanel bags, the Louis Vuitton, the Mercedes dealership, the airline charges for flights to Paris, to Rome, to Barcelona, the 5-star hotels, the Michelin-starred restaurants, the spa treatments and salon visits, the rent on an apartment that cost more per month than I had ever earned in my best years as a nurse. My son had stolen my identity to fund a fantasy life for his wife, and now I was left holding the bill. A week after our phone conversation, Derek and Stephanie showed up at my door unannounced. I had not been expecting them. When I saw their car pull into my driveway, my first instinct was to lock the door and pretend I was not home, but I knew I could not avoid this forever. I opened the door and looked at my son. He looked terrible, gaunt, hollow-eyed with dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. Stephanie stood beside him dressed far more simply than I had ever seen her. No designer labels visible, no diamonds in her ears. She looked smaller, somehow diminished. "Mom," Derek said, his voice hoarse. "Can we come in?" "Please." I stepped aside and let them enter. We sat in my living room, the same living room where Derek had taken his first steps, where we had celebrated his birthdays, where I had read him bedtime stories when he was small. Those memories felt like they belonged to someone else now. Derek started talking, the words pouring out of him like water from a broken dam. He apologized over and over. He said he knew he had messed up. He said he would do anything to make it right. "We will sell everything," he promised. "The car, the bags, all of it. We will use the money to pay you back. It will not cover everything, but it is a start." Stephanie spoke up, then her voice subdued. "Margaret, I want you to know that I had no idea where the money was coming from. Derek told me he had gotten a big raise and that his investments were doing well. I believed him. I looked at her with eyes that had cried themselves dry. But you never questioned it, did you? Your husband suddenly had money for private jets and penthouse apartments, and you never once asked how—" She could not meet my gaze. "I wanted to believe it," she admitted quietly. "I wanted the life we were living to be real." "Well, it was not real," I said. "It was built on theft. Theft from a 62-year-old widow who worked her whole life for what she has." Derek reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Mom, please, if you report this, I will go to prison. My life will be over. Please just give me a chance to make this right." I looked at my son, this stranger wearing my little boy's face, and asked him a question I had been thinking about for days. "How, Derek? How will you make this right? You do not have a job. You cannot even pay your own rent. Even if you sell everything Stephanie bought with my money, it will not come close to covering $240,000. Tell me, how exactly do you plan to pay me back?" He did not have an answer. Of course he did not. There was no answer. He had dug himself into a hole so deep that selling a car and some handbags would not even scratch the surface. After they left, I sat in my empty house and thought about my options. I could do what Derek wanted. I could stay quiet, let the debt pile up, and hope that somehow, someday, he would find a way to pay it off. But I knew what that would mean. It would mean losing my house. It would mean draining my retirement savings. It would mean spending my remaining years in poverty because my son had wanted to give his wife a lifestyle she had not earned. Or I could do something that broke my heart even to consider. I could report him. I could tell the police what he had done and let the justice system decide his fate. I thought about Robert, about what he would have said if he were still alive. Robert had loved Derek too, but he had also believed in honesty and responsibility. He used to tell Derek that a man is only as good as his word, and that taking shortcuts always catches up with you in the end. Derek had taken the biggest shortcut of all, and now it was catching up with him. I made my decision. The next morning, I drove to the police station. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel the entire way. I kept telling myself I could turn around. I did not have to do this. Derek was my son, my only child. How could I send my own child to prison? But then I thought about what would happen if I did not. The debt would continue to grow. The collectors would keep calling. Eventually, they would come for my house, my savings, everything I had worked for. At 62 years old, with no job and no income beyond Social Security, I would be destitute, and Derek, having faced no consequences, would have learned nothing. He might even do it again to me or to someone else. I parked the car and sat there for a long time, staring at the entrance to the police station. Then I took a deep breath, got out, and walked inside. Filing a police report was one of the hardest things I have ever done. The officer who took my statement was a kind woman about my age, with gray hair and gentle eyes. She did not judge me. She just listened as I explained what had happened, writing everything down in careful, precise handwriting. When I finished, she looked at me with sympathy. "This must be incredibly difficult for you," she said. "Reporting your own son." I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak without crying. She explained the process to me. The police would investigate. If they found sufficient evidence of identity theft and fraud, they would refer the case to the district attorney, who would decide whether to press charges. Given the amount of money involved and the fact that the fraud crossed state lines, this could become a federal case. I also filed a report with the Federal Trade Commission and initiated a dispute with the bank. I provided them with all the evidence I had, including the transaction records that showed Derek's phone number and the email address with his name in it. I explained that I had never authorized any of these accounts and that my son had used my personal information without my knowledge or consent. The investigation took time. Weeks turned into months. During that period, Derek called me dozens of times. At first, he was apologetic, pleading with me to drop the charges. When that did not work, he became angry. "How could you do this to your own son?" he demanded during one call. "After everything you said about loving me, you are going to send me to prison." I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to ask how he could have done what he did to his own mother. But I kept my voice calm. "You did this to yourself, Derek. I gave you a chance to make it right, and you could not. I have to protect myself now." He hung up on me. It was the last time we spoke before his arrest. The police found everything they needed. Derek had been sloppy in some ways, leaving a digital trail that was easy to follow. The email addresses, the phone records, the IP address of the computer used to submit the loan applications. It all pointed to him. He was arrested on a Tuesday morning, 3 months after I had filed the police report. The charges were federal identity theft and bank fraud. Both were felonies carrying potential sentences of up to 20 years in prison. Derek's lawyer advised him to plead guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. Fighting the charges would be futile given the evidence against him, and a trial would only make things worse. I went to the sentencing hearing. I do not know why. Maybe I needed to see it through to the end. Maybe some part of me still hoped that my little boy would appear and explain that this had all been a terrible mistake. But the man who stood before the judge was not my little boy. He was a grown man who had made bad choices, and now he had to face the consequences. The judge asked Derek if he had anything to say before sentencing. Derek turned and looked at me for the first time since the hearing began. His eyes were red, his face wet with tears. "I am sorry, Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "I am so sorry." Then he turned back to face the judge. The sentence was 3 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. He was also ordered to pay full restitution, though how he would do that from a prison cell was anyone's guess. Stephanie did not stick around to find out. She filed for divorce the week after Derek was arrested. She was not charged with any crime because there was no evidence she had known where the money was coming from. But her role in all of this, her demands, her expectations, her willingness to live large without asking questions haunted me for a long time. As for me, the bank eventually determined that I was indeed a victim of identity theft. The loans and credit card debts were removed from my credit report, and I was not held responsible for the money Derek had stolen. It took almost a year of paperwork and phone calls and certified letters, but in the end, my financial future was secured. I kept my house. I kept my retirement savings. I kept my life. But I lost my son. At least I lost the son I thought I had. The years that followed were the hardest of my life. Harder even than losing Robert, because at least when Robert died, I had Derek to hold on to. Now I had no one. Derek was sent to a federal prison in Indiana, about a 6-hour drive from my house. For the first 6 months, I did not visit him. I could not bring myself to see him in that place wearing an orange jumpsuit separated from me by glass and guards. Every time I thought about going, I would remember the betrayal. The lies, the months I had spent thinking I was losing my mind before I discovered the truth. But Derek wrote to me. Every week a letter would arrive in my mailbox, written in his familiar handwriting. The letters were apologetic at first, filled with excuses and justifications. But over time, they changed. The excuses faded. The justifications disappeared. What was left was raw, honest remorse. "I finally understand what you tried to teach me all those years," he wrote in one letter. "You taught me that hard work and honesty were the only paths to a good life. I did not listen. I thought there were shortcuts. There are no shortcuts, Mom. There is only the right way and the wrong way, and I chose wrong. I read that letter over and over looking for signs that he was manipulating me again. But something felt different. Something felt genuine. 6 months after his incarceration, I finally drove to Indiana to see him. The prison was a grim gray building surrounded by razor wire and guard towers. I had to pass through metal detectors and pat-downs and endless checkpoints before I was allowed into the visiting room. When Derek walked in, I barely recognized him. His hair was cut short, almost shaved. He had lost weight. His face looked older, more lined, as if he had aged a decade in 6 months. But when he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. "Mom," he whispered, "you came." We talked for an hour. He told me about prison, about the programs he was participating in, about the job training classes he was taking. He told me he had been seeing a counselor working through the issues that had led him to make such terrible choices. I realized I was trying to be someone I was not, he said. I wanted Stephanie to be proud of me, but I was going about it all wrong. I thought money could fix everything. I thought if I gave her what she wanted, she would love me forever. But all I did was destroy everything that mattered. I did not say much during that visit. I just listened. I was not ready to forgive him yet. I was not sure I ever would be. But I was there. That was a start. Stephanie, meanwhile, had disappeared from our lives entirely. After the divorce was finalized, she moved to another state to live with an aunt. I heard through the grapevine that she had taken a job as a sales clerk at a mid-range clothing store. No more designer labels. No more luxury vacations. The life she had demanded that Derek provide for her was gone, and she had no one to blame but herself. I did not gloat over her downfall. I took no pleasure in her suffering, but I would be lying if I said I felt sorry for her. She had been part of the problem. Her demands, her expectations, her refusal to question where the money was coming from. She may not have known Derek was committing fraud, but she had created the pressure that drove him to it. During the 3 years Derek was in prison, I slowly began to rebuild my life. I started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Patterson who specialized in trauma and family issues. She helped me work through the feelings of betrayal, the guilt I felt for reporting my own son, the grief I experienced over the loss of the relationship we used to have. "It was not your fault," Dr. Patterson told me during one session. "You did not fail Derek. He made his own choices, and you had every right to protect yourself from the consequences of those choices." I also began to reconnect with my community. I joined a volunteer group at my church helping to organize food drives and community dinners. I made new friends, people who knew my story and did not judge me for it. One woman, a retired teacher named Barbara, became particularly close. She had been through her own family struggles, and we bonded over our shared experiences. "I am proof that you can survive the worst thing you can imagine," Barbara told me once. And so are you. She was right. I had survived. I was surviving. I also started writing letters back to Derek. Short ones at first, just a few sentences letting him know I had received his latest letter. But over time, my letters grew longer. We started having real conversations on paper conversations about life and mistakes and redemption. 3 years after his arrest, Derek was released from prison. I was there on the day he walked out, standing in the parking lot with the sun in my eyes and my heart in my throat. He emerged from the gates looking like a different man. The cockiness was gone. The desperation was gone. What was left was someone quieter, humbler, more thoughtful. Someone who had been broken down and was slowly rebuilding himself. "Thank you for coming, Mom," he said when he reached me. "I did not expect you to be here. You served your time," I told him. "Now it is about what you do next." He did not ask me for money. He did not ask to move in with me. He had already arranged everything himself. A halfway house program for formerly incarcerated individuals had given him a place to stay. A construction company that specialized in hiring people with criminal records had offered him an entry-level job. The pay was low, but it was honest work. "I do not expect you to trust me again, Mom," Derek said as we stood in that parking lot, "but I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the son you deserved." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I stepped forward and hugged him. It was the first time I had hugged my son in 3 years. We stayed like that for a while, both of us crying, both of us holding on. We did not say anything else. We did not need to. In the months that followed, Derek kept his word. He worked hard at his construction job, earning promotions and raises. He started paying back the restitution he owed a little at a time. He rented a small apartment, nothing fancy but clean and comfortable. He called me every Sunday just like he used to, and we talked about our weeks, about the small victories, and the everyday challenges. He also started volunteering at a local youth center, mentoring teenagers who were at risk of going down the wrong path. He told them his story, the whole ugly truth, as a warning of what could happen if they made bad choices. I want them to learn from my mistakes, he explained. If I can keep even one kid from ruining his life like I ruined mine, then maybe something good can come out of all this. I was proud of him for that, carefully, cautiously proud. The trust between us was still fractured, still healing. I did not let him handle any of my financial matters. I kept him at a certain distance, a safety zone that protected me from being hurt again. But within those boundaries, our relationship began to grow again. It was different from before. It could never be the same. But different did not have to mean worse. In some ways, our new relationship was more honest, more real than the old one had ever been. Looking back on everything that happened, I have learned some lessons that I want to share with anyone who is listening to this story. The first lesson is about boundaries in love. I love Derek with all my heart. I still do. But love without boundaries is not love. It is enabling. When Derek asked me not to report him, he was asking me to sacrifice my future to protect him from the consequences of his actions. If I had agreed, I would have been sending him a message that his behavior was acceptable, that I would always bail him out no matter what he did. That is not love. That is codependency. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no, even when it breaks your heart. The second lesson is about protecting yourself. I trusted Derek completely. I gave him access to my most sensitive personal information without a second thought because he was my son and I never imagined he would betray me. That trust was used against me. I am not saying you should never trust your family, but trust should be earned over time, not given automatically because of blood. And you should always take precautions to protect your identity and your finances, even with the people closest to you. Keep your Social Security card in a safe place. Be careful about who has access to your documents. Monitor your credit regularly. These are not signs of paranoia. They are basic self-protection. The third lesson is about forgiveness and letting go. For a long time after everything happened, I was consumed by anger. Anger at Derek for what he had done. Anger at Stephanie for her part in it. Anger at myself for being so blind. That anger ate away at me like acid. It kept me up at night. It stole my appetite. It made me bitter and hard. But holding on to that anger was only hurting me. Derek was in prison facing the consequences of his actions. Stephanie was living a diminished life stripped of the luxuries she had demanded. They were dealing with their own punishments. My anger did not affect them at all. It only affected me. Forgiveness is not about saying that what someone did was okay. It is about releasing the grip that their actions have on your soul. It is about choosing peace over pain. I chose to forgive Derek not because he deserved it, but because I deserved to be free of the burden I was carrying. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means choosing peace over pain. If you are watching this and you have a child who has hurt you deeply, know that you are not alone, and know that protecting yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot help anyone if you have destroyed yourself in the process. My son took $200,000 from me, but he could not take my dignity. He could not take my strength. He could not take my peace. Those belong to me, and no one can steal them unless I let them. Today, Derek is doing well. He has a stable job, a modest apartment, and a life built on honest work. We have dinner together once a month. We talk on the phone every week. Our relationship is different from what it was, but it is real. It is built on truth instead of illusions. As for me, I am at peace. I am 65 years old now. I still live in my little house in Ohio. I still tend my tomato garden. I still clip coupons and wear comfortable shoes. I am not rich, but I am comfortable. And more importantly, I am free. So let me leave you with this question. If someone you loved betrayed you, what would you do? Would you protect them at the cost of yourself? Or would you stand up for what is right, even if it means letting them face the consequences of their actions? There is no easy answer, but I hope my story has given you something to think about. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to choose between enabling someone you love and protecting yourself? How did you handle it? If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you have not already, subscribed to my channel so you can hear more stories like this one. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I hope that whatever challenges you are facing in your own life, you find the strength to make the choices that are right for you. Take care of yourselves, and remember, you are worthy of love, of respect, and of a life that is not built on lies. Until next time.